Okay, in this UML session, we are going to basically learn the state diagram. So we completed the introduction to the UML, we completed the use cases, activity diagram, class diagram, and now we are basically learning state diagram. Okay, so let me just give you a little bit of introduction. The UML state diagram or the state diagram machine or the state chart, so there are multiple, it is known by multiple names. It is used to capture the distinct behavior of the component of the designed system. Distinct behavior of component of a designed system through finite state transition. So the finite state transition, we will have a system pointers. Within that only we will see how the transition will happen. There are two types of state diagram. One is Mealy, 1995 she is done, who defined that the output of automation depends on the current state of the automation as well as on the input. So what is a current state? For example, if the current state is at the beginning of the stage or the middle of the stage or at certain point of this the process or event, and then at that stage what happens, that's where it is we talk about. While Moore automata was the output is only depends on the current state, so they are not talking about the input different. But nowadays the complexity has increased, so you may have to consider the input as well. Okay, so here are the few concepts are there. A state will define a particular state of the system and depicts the specific behavior in the state. So what a particular specific behavior in the particular state. So we will have a few, but there are more actually. I have just taken the few primary one. That's the initial state. That is, it describes the state when the system is idle and waiting for user inputs. It is also known as a default state of the composite state. So what's the default state? It could be, for example, when you go to the ATM, you will see the default state as the main screen, right? That's the default state. It is depicted with a small solid circle. Okay. The final state, when we talk about, it is a state that describes when the system completes its process and waiting for the next cycle. So it could be first and the last, the initial and the final state could be same, because once you start the ATM machine, before you see the screen, and once you complete the process and you come back, then you see the same screen, then you come to know, okay, you have completed the process, now it is ready for the next the customer, or for you also for the next transaction, right? Like that. This is could be going back to the initial stage. It is depicted by the circle and the cross. Inside the cross we will see how it will look like. For example, ATM machine in the initial stage and the final stage is the same after the user or the customer completes the transaction. When it completes the cycle, it again goes back to the initial stage and ready for the new transaction cycle. This is what exactly I mentioned. In the entry point and exit points are slightly different. Entry point is, it is an entry point of the state or the composite state. It is depicted by a small circle on the border of the state. All the events happening within the state, so that we will have a border, and I will show you how the border will look like. Here is the border. You see here, this is a border, and this is the entry, and this is a exit, but this is a initial and the final state. So this is entry, and this is exit, and this what we call the square with angles, basically that is your the state, and within the state all of this the transactions happen. The entry point is a small entry point of the state or the composite state. It is basically depicted by a small circle on the border of the state. If you see, it is border of the state, right? It's the entry point. And the same exit is also small circle, but inside there is a what we call a cross, so you know it is entry. Now we talk about the some of the notations. If you see initial state, it will look like a circle and the rectangle with the curved bracket basically, and the final state you can have the end. But if it is initial and final state, you can just keep the same one, no problem. In the fork means you will find one, it is splitting into the two different events, right? One event is splitting into two different, that is a fork, and opposite is that two different events are basically combined and coming as a one. Okay, and the state is basically depicted as a rectangular, but it has a curved angle, and within that you can write down the name of the state. Inside the state you can have a hierarchization, so you can have two separate states in the same level, okay, and within one state, okay. Concurrent states, you can have two processes or two events happening concurrently, and then they can be basically joined. So that is a concurrent. It is automation 1, automation 2. When you talk about the event or the activity, how you depict is basically is a curved line, okay. That's a transition from one state to another state, is a curved line. And entry point, if you see, I have just talked about a circle and on the border of your state, and exit is also same circle at the border. But if you see, arrow is entering inside the state, exit arrow is going out of the state, okay. And in the exit, circle is has a cross, okay. And example is here, look at this one. If you see the entry, this is the initial and final state, so I have not mentioned whether it is initial, just mentioned circle. Entering the system is ready. What it is doing, select the beneficiary, so it is entering into that state, and then you select the beneficiary. You can also do simultaneously enter the amount, either way is fine, so you have to do that. There is a slightly one but when you do the select beneficiary and enter amount, both of them you do, then only then you can complete the system verification. There is one line is missing, one from either if you start from the enter amount, then you can give one connection to the select beneficiary and come back to the system verification, or the vice versa, if you do the select beneficiary and do the enter amount and do the system verification. Means both of them are required to complete for going for the system verification. When you do the system verification, what happens? System verifies the amount and security code, and then it comes to the transfer is completed. At this state, the transfer is completed, then it goes into the exit mode. Okay, exit. So then from exit, again it is a system is ready. This is your initial state or final state. Again back to the original, right? So when you go to this one, it is basically fund is transferred successfully. There is also one line mentioned going to the one basically transaction. It is if a person decide to exit in the middle of the transaction or middle of the fund transfer, so there is one line, it is saying cancel, and it is goes again, system goes back to the original state. That's a system is ready. Like when you enter into when you enter your card into the ATM machine, and then you change your mind at some point, and then you said cancel, right? So then it cancel will go take the system back, and then it will give you a card back to you. So that's the basically end of your that state, right? So you complete the whole the events, right? So either you complete or you cancel, either way is fine. Question? So this is pretty simple actually, it's not much difficult. The problem happens only when you have basically a complex part, okay. So let me just basically bring it here. Now since I have older version of the click chart, I don't have that information here. I will just go simply and use another diagram, like a data flow diagram. I need this carved, so this is the one I'm going to use it actually. It doesn't matter, okay. And then I will just create a few and use them later stage. Okay, so this is just a simple version. And the same thing, I don't have the circle, as I said I have older version. I just give this one 2 and 3, enough. Okay, now let's basically go back. This is a very the basic style of doing it, okay. Oh, the click chart is not visible again. Okay, hold on. Okay. What I was mentioning when I started the new one, if you see here, I have an older version here, UML. When I see, I don't have this, the state, the diagram. I mean, this is a kind of annotations. So what I did is that I went ahead and checked the data flow diagram, and I used this as a process, and I used this as a circle to basically create. Now I will see the name, all my the states. One is initial state, then you may have is basically enter beneficiary. That's another state. Then you can have add amount, enter amount. Okay, then you will have is a system validation. We will put it as a just a system validation. So it is all the validation will take place. One is the amount and the balance and this one, and then also the security code, and then we will put it as a transaction complete. So these are the different state I have created. So we have to connect them. Okay. So I can have here amount enter simultaneously. That's fine. System verification we can create here. Transaction complete, yes, and then I will need this one. I'm going to basically see, this is how I was using them actually, because the older version did not have this part. So now what we need to do is basically okay, when we say this one, and this is also initial stage. Now from here you can basically select this is here. If you see here, click chart, connector, you have different straight, orthogonal and curve. Use a curve now, and you say here connect them here. Okay, so it is state connecting. From here you can connect. From here you can connect them. You can also connect from here because you want one more, right? So let me just get this one. There are two entry points. Let's basically delete this point. Okay. So this is also one way connecting them. So when you enter the beneficiary, you also have to enter the amount and then do the system, and it could also be vice versa, and you can either create another one or you can just put them together, okay, like that. That is fine. And then you can basically bring it back. Actually, you check with how is your logic will work, right? So you connect them back, and then from here you can put it back this way. Okay. And it is entry. So you remember this is entering and this is exit, and one more for the cancellation. So don't worry about the way it looked like. So you can go and click on the pointer. Here is a pointer. Okay, click on the pointer. You can change the angle of this one. Okay, like for example, if you want to make it a little nice, so use them. Okay, and if you want to make them like a little proper curve, this one proper curve, you can click them. Okay, this one again, it's not looking too great, so I'm just going to basically make them uniform. Making them look is important because a lot of places the look and feel is highly important for them. How does this look like? Now this is how you can create, and then you can use a text information. For example, what information is that? Enter amount. So this will you can basically reduce the font size, otherwise it will look too big and not. Okay, so this is the font size you can use and make them look good. So like that you can add all the information here and then basically complete it. Okay, question. I'm going to use it either. I'll just make this as a two-way arrow. So we have to have this one. Okay, so you can basically either you enter the amount and enter the beneficiary and do the system validation, or this and this and do this one. I think there's some logic is wrong here. You have to add something, but
Yes. Create a process diagram.
uh-huh.
So converting this diagram to this thing in a more detailed and descriptive form. Is it that you're asking? Like what it looks like? Because I created a process diagram.
No, this is not a process diagram. Okay.
I know that, but it is some more in detail. Like I am relating the concept.
Okay. So here it is when the transaction is completed. The one part I forgot about is basically this. This is how I did actually, and I selected them here and made it as a okay, that's fine. It's fine. Okay, so you can basically use various ways and the concept and check how the system will basically go from one state to another state and create. And to make it look beautiful, again this part you can basically fill in with the color, and maybe the red is okay here. And this one is basically entry level, you can add a green color, so and so forth. Okay, so this is the way. And if you want to basically make it as a distinguished, then you can just add a little bit of a gray color, so they will know what's the boundary here, maybe. You see, so then you can add other colors as you need, as you feel it. Okay, but in case if this is confusing, then you can basically remove this one way, you make it one way only. I'll just add no, I think I need this one. I don't need this one. So I can just remove this part here. Okay, so just reduce the complexity. Let it be only one entry point. Doesn't matter if there is no entry point. It's so this is more useful actually if you see here. So and this we don't need. So from here it will go to enter amount and then come back and system validation. Right? This is a very again the basic. What it is basically helping the developer to understand how the system will move from one state to another state and what exactly changes. That information writing around that is very important. Okay, and then especially when you write a requirement and then again describe in the process diagram and all, but this kind of information will tell you, a diagram will talk about, okay, this is where it goes into back to the initial state, and initial state and the final states are the same. If it cancels but in a particular state anywhere in the state, so it should go back to the initial state, right, like that. So those are the basically the information can be easily captured with the state diagram. So it will ask you about how it changes from state 1 to state 2. Okay. So, I mean, it may not look good right now, but you can basically look or search some the information, and you will find. Okay, so that's all about the state diagram.